Episode 78. The Impact of Creativity. Introducing Tom Leishman on the BTS Creative Academy podcast UNCUT. With me, your host, Martin Colton. So, Tom, welcome to the podcast. Currently sponsored by Dorrington's this morning.
Yes. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, you've had a nice journey in. So Tom, yes, welcome. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
On the BTS Creative Academy. I've got my notebook here because I've got a few things about you. Curious, dyslexic, passionate. When I asked you 3 words to describe yourself, that's what you hit me with. You didn't jump straight into your professional stuff, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Which I've been looking into. Really, really interesting. I guess I'm assuming you're a photographer.
Yeah.
Is kind of like your main thing. Also director, producer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah? Lovely. But before we get into that, I have a little tradition.
Okay.
With this show.
Oh, is this where you do the clap thing?
I do the clap.
Yeah,
Yes.
but hang on. Why don't we do a high five?
That would be nice.
Yeah, because it's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing.
And when how we found each other was
Yes.
through Bumble,
Yes.
and my bio says,
And we'll explain that, the Bumble thing. Yeah.
I said on my bio, I'm looking for creatives to high five.
Nice. We should have done a countdown. 3,
Okay.
2, 1. Nice. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. We're in the zone.
We're in it.
We're in the podcast.
We're here.
So we met on Bumble, which is interesting even on itself, because I think a lot of people see Bumble, the app, as a dating app, but there are other sides to it, aren't there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Bumble Business. Yeah, that's how we met. And
Yeah, so with Bumble, you've got the dating side to it, you've got
Yeah.
the friendship side, and then there's also Bumble Bizz, the networking side.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
I think it was the first day that I was on there, which I came across you.
Yeah, I wanted to be on there because. Okay, sorry, can I do this without the earphones?
You can do if you'd
Because it's
prefer
like
to.
I'm hearing my voice and I'm not
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
that. Yeah, Bumble Business. Yeah, I was looking for inspiration,
Mhm.
and I was looking to inspire other people.
Nice.
And I created a profile on there. But yeah, I think this is the first time I've ever been on a date with a man. And I think it's the first time I've ever been on a date with a man that's being filmed.
That's filming it
Yeah.
and recording it. Yeah.
Yeah.
New things.
Yeah.
And like you say, meeting other creatives is like quite a special thing, really, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because sometimes it can be quite a solitary pursuit. Would you say?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can we start again? Is that all right?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course,
because
yeah.
I had the earphones thing like.
It kind of put you on.
Yeah, because I kept on hearing my own voice. Is that all right if we do that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it's
Sorry.
like however you want to do it. Take a moment if you like.
Yeah, sorry.
It gets quite warm as well, doesn't it? Like when you.
Yeah, it's because like when you were talking, all I kept on thinking was like, oh, God, my voice is so loud in my ear, and I just wasn't used to that.
For me, I find it helps keep me in the zone. Keep me in this time and place, and I think that's what a lot of the podcast, radio interviews, talk shows.
Yeah.
I think that's why they really bring the headphones into it.
Okay.
But it is a different. No,
Yeah.
Other people have said to me like you said about being dyslexic and the way that your
it's
mind
like,
works.
Yeah, it was just like, because it was, I don't know, like I'm not used to that, I suppose.
Yes,
Not used to having earphones on when I'm having.
Yeah, that's okay. Take a sip. Take a moment.
Okay.
We can literally go from the beginning if you like.
What? Like start again now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know why I'm like struggling with the earphones. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
I think some it's hearing yourself is I say is a bit different, and it works for me, but if it doesn't work for you,
Yeah. Okay. So, should we do the introduction again?
let's do the introduction.
Sorry, because I thought we were doing really well as well, and the high five thing was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for messing that up.
You haven't messed it up, mate. That's fine. No, that's the thing with this. It is a conversation, and even maybe to some degrees, it's good to show. I've got this thing at the moment about showing myself failing a little bit sometimes, to show myself also overcoming that failure.
Hey, we're overcoming it.
We're overcoming it now, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you might have a little stumble. I've had lots of stumbles in my creative life, lots.
Yeah.
and sometimes you just have to take a moment and take a beat and stop and breathe and go again.
You wouldn't. You have to send love to all those failures, though, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Because those failures, like, they're what made you, in a way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, sometimes I think about, like, if I have a son, like, what, if he has failures in life, is that, like, do I have to protect him?
Mm-hmm.
Should I protect him and stop him from having those failures? But then when I think about all my failures and all the things that I struggled with, they're the things that actually made me.
Mm.
You know, they're the actual things that were difficult, and I learned something from it, and I got better.
Yes.
And it's like, I think about, because I don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
how old are you now?
I'm 37.
Okay.
And
so there's still time.
Yeah.
I think we get to this point in our life and we think maybe sometimes with some of the things as well, maybe there's not so much time, don't we? But there is still a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, so yeah, I see them as like the failures as like I've had this thing recently about like they're the foundations of you. It's like we're building something, maybe like a metaphor, like we're building a house, and that was literally the foundations. That was the mud, the dirt, the grit, and some of it's a little bit bad, some of it's a bit rough. But we have to, before we can start laying those first bricks of that house that you're building, that life that you're building, you need to get that foundation right, and you need to have some of the dirt in there. You know.
So how many kids have you got?
I've got 2 children.
2.
I've got a daughter, 15,
Yeah.
and my son's 18.
Okay.
Had kids quite young. But yeah, no, I completely agree with your thoughts on that about if you see them stumble, you have to let them stumble sometimes.
But that's like that's a fatherly love, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like a father will let you go on a bike and they'll let you fall off the bike, whereas your mother won't let you do that. They'll try and protect you, but the father knows that if you hurt yourself, you're going to learn a lesson.
Yeah, and it is really hard. It is really difficult. You know, I think my daughter in particular, she has been very active all of her life. Like from the moment she was born, she was moving, wriggling. She'd see a cliff face and she'd want to jump off of it. You know, she'd just always going for adventures. She'd see a tree and she'd want to climb it. And that can be quite scary as a young parent. Seeing your child just want to always throw themselves into adventure and danger. And if you probably ask her, she would probably say that I'm overbearing on my protectiveness. But I do try to allow her to climb those trees. And if she really sat back and thought about it, she'd go, "Oh, I did climb a lot of trees actually, you know, and I did go on a lot of adventures." And I didn't fall off the cliff edge, you know, because then I guess you've got to take that moment of where is the line of letting them discover the failures.
Yeah.
So where do you think the line is?
I think with boys you got to be different. I think with boys you can be a little bit more. You can push them a bit further to that line.
Okay.
I think with girls, maybe you have to protect them a little bit more. But I don't know, because obviously I haven't experienced it yet. But that's my assumption.
We're all living in the same world. Why do you think boys and girls are different?
Well, because men are men, women are women. I think it's just.
And I guess it's like kind of within our nature to want to be protective of the women, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like it's in our biology. It's like it's instinctual in us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, like I say, like my 2 children have been very different characters. Like they're very different types of people. Yeah. And I think when you have children, even if you have a girl and a boy, they might not be your typical boys and girls. So you have to be also adaptable.
Yeah.
To them as well.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, actually. This brings me back to when we were speaking on Bumble Bizz, that you asked me about like what inspired me, didn't you? Why am I doing this? And I said, didn't I? My daughter was an inspiration for starting the podcast up.
Yeah. Why? Like, Is it because you want her to watch this and learn from it?
She won't watch.
Oh, she will.
Do you think so?
Yeah, of course she will.
Do you think so? Just out of curiosity?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to be able to time travel back and see into my parents' minds at stages in their lives. And especially like when she gets to your age, where you are now, she might look back on this and be like, oh, that's where my dad was at.
Yes.
Then in that time in his life.
Yeah. And actually, this is a bit of a journal entry. Yeah. This is a journal entry, a diary moment for me and for you. I'd like it to be about you more than me.
Oh yeah.
This is, I've asked you to come on here, but no, I'm open to sharing as well. And I think if she looks back, or if my son looks back on this time, that they'd see that I did they know that I had a hard time recently, that I was struggling with my mental health and with what I was doing, my purpose within the world, and they saw that, and they definitely had to deal with that as well, which was, I guess, unfair on them. You don't no father wants to put that on their kids. That they have to be sensitive and look after their parent. That's not. Yeah. It's not great. Yeah. To know that you've done that. But I'd like to think that maybe that taught them some lessons as well. Made them stronger. But yeah, no, I'm open to sharing that there is I do feel at this moment in time, having had I had a bad 18 months, and now that was like 24 months ago. I feel like I'm coming out the other side of that.
I'm the same. I took a year off to focus my attention on an autoimmune condition.
Right.
And it's been a journey. Like, I went from being I tried the carnivore diet. I was ice baths, celery juicing. I've been doing everything.
Nice.
You know,
Can I ask first of all, what is an autoimmune deficiency?
Disorder. Disease.
Disease.
Yeah, an autoimmune condition. So like psoriasis, eczema, lupus, I think. Things like that. And they're diseases of the immune system. So the immune system starts attacking itself. But I see it like it's like an Rubik's Cube. I'm trying to work out the algorithm.
Right.
And eventually I'll land on something. I think time's on my side. And
so you've had this a long time.
Yeah, I had it when I was like 17. Yeah. And taking a year out to focus my attention on that, I mean, that's such a luxury, such a privilege to be able to like do that. And I don't think many people get the chance to put the handbrake on and just evaluate things. So
I think we need to find that somehow. Yeah. That's what I did with me when I'm saying I had that really tough time. It didn't just end one day. I had to stop. I had to have a pause. I had to breathe. I had to be lost in a sense for me with my mental health problem. Is that the same with your health problem? That you feeling that time for putting the handbrake on helped you?
Yeah. You have to lose yourself sometimes to find yourself, though.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's I can definitely relate with the mental health stuff, because having an autoimmune condition, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you see that you've got something wrong with you, it's jarring. You're like, looking at that. I don't look healthy, Should we not turn this into our therapy sessions? Should we just turn? Should we go back to creativity?
I think this is an important thing, because we've all got our lives going on. Yeah. We want I personally get a lot of benefit out of the creativity, and I feel like the creativity is what's pulled me out of those dark times. Having that thing in my life to drive me forward, having this podcast to drive me forward. I see this as a creative endeavor, and having that thing that I can work on, that my brain can have a focus, and it can look forward, backward, to the present. And I would guess it's similar with yourself, that you've got this really difficult thing in your life, but yet you can ground yourself within your photography.
Yeah, it's definitely a distraction. It is, yeah. When you're in a creative flow, when you're like just creating, you kind of, I've heard it described as in like, I think it was Michael Duchamp, the artist.
Mm-hmm.
He said when we create, our mind and our brain goes to its least primal. So we're our least animalistic when we're our most creative. So like when you're in that flow state, there's nothing primal about it. You're just creating. You're just making. You're just whatever it is you're doing. And there is like a blissfulness when you're in that flow state. When you're like, and I'll put it to you. So if you're like, say you're doing like improv acting,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in that flow, and you're just, it's ideas in out the mouth. Just you're not having, you're not thinking. You're like removed.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a blissfulness about it.
Oh, 100%.
And
it's a place I long for. I yearn for it. That's where I want to be.
Yeah. Interestingly, I was listening to Rick Rubin.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, he's incredible when you listen to him talk about like creativity. But he kind of added on what Duchamp says, and I found it so insightful. But he was saying that when he creates, because we're all doing it because we're trying to find a purpose and we're trying to make sense of stuff. And he was saying that he sees it as a gift to the universe, right? So when he creates something, it's a gift to the universe and it's a gift to God.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go back and you look at those like ancient structures, like cathedrals, and you look through like old Bibles and textbooks, and you see the artistry, the depth and the build and the quality, and you look at that and you think, what was this for? And when you see your creativity as a gift to the universe or a gift to God, and like you were saying, when you're in that flow state, you feel this blissfulness and you yearn for it. That's why it
almost feels in a way spiritual. I'm not religious, but I see that. I see that, and I feel that that. Does it almost sound too pretentious when we say that as creatives? Oh, we're creating something for God. Because there are people that don't have creativity in their life, aren't there? There are people that just do a normal 9-to-5 job. And they're having a mundane, what I'd call a mundane life. And they would look at us and go, "Oh, they're those arty people."
But that's to assume though that those people, so take a lawyer or an accountant, that they actually have the ability to be creative. I don't think everyone actually can. I think,
do you not?
No, I like there's some people that are just extraordinary at certain things, and I think to say everyone can be creative, I mean, yeah, everyone can. For example, everyone can sing, but there's only one Freddie Mercury. There's only one Michael Jackson.
Yes.
There's only one Mariah Carey.
Yeah, I guess the talents are. I'd like to think the talents are in individual areas and areas that you've got natural gifts. Like Freddie Mercury, born with a natural gift of that voice. Yeah. And then there are talents that you can work on and build and enhance that you might not have been born with the perfect voice, but it can. There's plenty of other singers out there that aren't perfect. But we still enjoy their music through the hard work that they've put in. I'd like to challenge that though, about that not everyone can be creative. Like if we think of like lawyers and accountants and those type of jobs, they have to have some kind of imagination to work through the problems that they have, don't they?
Do you want a creative accountant? I mean, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I mean,
yes.
It's it's like any sort of.
I guess that's what's being human, because I could use an app as an accountant, couldn't you these days?
But I think as creatives though, we tend to like I definitely used to do this. I used to think about the world completely from my perspective. So I always used to just like, because I found photography so young. Like I became a professional photographer at 19.
Wow.
Right. But I mean. How I found out I was a professional photographer like just I didn't know I was one.
Mm-hmm.
I got paid a £5 and a pint of beer.
Okay.
That was my first ever gig.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to photograph a heavy metal band. And I did that, and the guy gave me the money, and I felt embarrassed. I was like, why are you giving me this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I was confused about that someone was paying me something to do that I love.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I asked I went to college and I asked a lecturer there, I says, what's the difference between a amateur photographer and a professional photographer? And he said a professional photographer earns money from it. And I was like, oh, well, that's me then, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, why am I here then?
Mm-hmm.
I've already done it. I am a professional photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was saying earlier was that my perception on the world was always just like, I couldn't understand why some people hadn't found the thing they loved. Because I found it immediately. I was 19. I'm a photographer.
Yes, yeah.
And that was it. So when I saw my friends having like these like existential crises, like I don't know what to do, I don't know where I'm going in life, I don't know what career, I don't know what to study, I'd be like, just do the thing you love. I couldn't comprehend it because it came so. It was easy for me.
Why do you think there was anything that allowed you to find that easy? Do you think there was anything? Because when I've seen other people that aren't able to find their thing, I know plenty of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s that still don't know what their thing is that they do. And I wonder if it's got something to do, going back to those foundations.
Foundations are so important. Interesting, Baz Luhrmann in that song, Always Wear Sunscreen.
Yes.
He says in that, he says, some of the most interesting people I know are 40 or 50 or something like that. And he says, and they still do not know what they want to do in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what you want to do in your life, that's okay. And I used to listen to that lyric and be like, who are these people that don't know what they want to do? But that was because I was seeing the world kind of one-dimensionally, because I was still like young in my mind and not experienced. So I was confused about it. But yeah, my foundations played such a big factor in it. I mean, I'm from a working class background. Like both my grandparents were coal miners, and seeing how hard they worked. You know, hard work is one of the most important ingredients you need to be successful as a photographer. And watching those men, I mean, they were men. You know, they worked down in the coal mines. Their arms were huge.
Yes, yeah.
You know, like, and you could see they worked hard. And
you were given a kind of philosophy of life.
Yeah,
from seeing the people around you.
Yeah, my granddad in particular was so stoic. He was quiet. He was like he didn't need to say anything. His presence said everything. You know, how he held himself. And but yeah, the foundations. I mean, I have a deaf parent, so my father's deaf, and I think growing up in a quiet house, a silent house, I discovered music really strange. Like I found music. I discovered music. No dad ever sat down with me and went, "This is the Who. Right. These are awesome. This is the Clash. You want to listen to these?" Or "This is AC/DC." I never got anything like that. I had to discover music on my own, and I became obsessed with music. Like,
so maybe there was in that, it sounds at first like, oh, that's a bit of a shame, but actually maybe there was a gift there.
Yeah,
that you got that opportunity to discover your own thing, to discover your music.
Yeah, because my nephew plays football, and sometimes when I go and watch him, I see the parents at the side, and you can see the parents that are like really pushing their kid to be the next Premier League footballer, you know, and they're really like, and I observe it and I think, is that really the kid's dream or is that the parent's dream? And I think growing up with a deaf parent, like I was kind of like a clean slate. Like there was no influence on me. I had to just kind of figure out the world myself. Yeah. And when I discovered music, I became obsessed with it. Like I fell in love with it. The Beach Boys was my first ever cassette. And then I Right Said Fred. There's no like
order to what you were finding.
No, and then I fell in love with Michael Jackson. And when I became a photographer, it was because of my love for music.
Right. Okay.
So
how did the two link?
So there was like, I mean, do you remember there was like we went through like a punk rock, emo, heavy metal scene,
Right.
like,
Okay. Yeah.
not too long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was like a local little circuit going on, like little bands, and I had no money, but I really wanted to see the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I convinced a band to put me on the guest list. I'll take your pictures, if I can come in for free.
Yeah.
And I'll give you these pictures. And I got a camera from a police auction website. It cost me £60,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a 3 megabyte camera.
What's a police auction website? Like a lost and found
selling
off stuff, is it?
Yeah, yes.
Right, okay.
So if people, it was called Bumble Bizz auctions, and it
Right,
was
okay.
when the police retrieved stolen stuff that they
Mhm.
couldn't give to anyone, they would auction it off.
Right.
And I got this Sony Cybershot, and I took it down to this venue, and I took pictures of this band,
Mm-hmm.
and they put it on their MySpace, and it went. Phew, everyone was like, "Who did you photos? These are great."
Yeah.
And,
MySpace, go.
yeah, well,
the beginning of the internet.
Yeah,
days, yeah.
yeah, and that was how my career started. It was on social media, the early stages.
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of social media on MySpace, and I think it's because of my dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
I can see things before other people, or maybe like I can strategize certain things, and I would make deals with bands. I'd go over and be like, "Hey, if I do a photo shoot with you guys, can you promote me and put me in your top 8? Your friends,
Nice. Yeah.
and give me some exposure." So I worked with a bunch of these upcoming UK bands,
Mm-hmm.
and they supported me by promoting me, and that got me more work, and then it just snowballed. And I think so my love for music
Mm-hmm.
and my craftiness was the thing that navigated me through.
Navigate you through this career path.
Yeah, and then and then I ended up. I used to tell my friends I was kind of like weirdly deluded, but I mean, it happened.
Mm.
I manifested it, but
Yeah.
it was like I would sit there with my friends saying, "I'm going to be a rock and roll photographer," and they'd be like, "Come on, dream on." I mean, my best mate was a car mechanic. My other best mate was a plumber. And I'm sitting there going, "I'm going to be a rock and roll photographer," and they were like, "You need to wake up, mate."
Yeah.
And
You need to get a proper job.
you need to get a proper job. Yeah, and then before I knew it, I was touring the world. I was traveling around with pop bands. I was shooting, and I was doing it.
Yeah.
And it was like that. It just happened like that.
Let's go back to that manifesting and being dyslexic, because I have a similar thing. I'm dyslexic as well, and I find with my dyslexia, it really helps me when I'm directing. If I put on a theatre production, I can envisage the whole production. I know exactly where we're going. You have that job of like relaying that to everyone else, and sometimes the vision is slightly different, but I can see what I want to achieve. And so is that from the dyslexia, or is it a manifestation?
From what I understand, dyslexic people are quite good at predicting outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have you ever looked into the dyslexic mind? You have.
Yes. Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Mm. It's almost like we're strategizing in a way, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like creating a path to somewhere.
Yeah. Did you feel like were you public school?
Yeah, I went to a normal public school. Yeah.
So like my public schooling was terrible.
Yeah, no, at secondary school, I remember it was like, one of them like core memories. I remember this guy coming into the school, and he had this funny little moustache. He was a real kind of character, and he'd obviously been asked to come in and sit down and assess me. And he sat with me for a lesson, and at the end of it, he just basically told me I'm slow. And there was no assessment other than I'm just slower than everyone else.
Yeah, so weird.
And that's in that's in the end of the 90s. I left school in 2000. And so the end of the 90s, it just basically went to me, there's nothing wrong with you, you're slow.
Yeah.
And that was the assessment that I got. And then as soon as I went to college, within a week, the form tutor there said something along the lines of, "There's something different about you. It's not that you're slow. There's something different. Like, let's have a proper assessment." And then I had a dyslexic assessment, and they were like, "Yes, you should have got support at school."
My story is identical to yours.
Really?
Absolutely identical.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like they're like casting a spell on you when they say you're slow, because you're so malleable when you're a kid at that age. And imagine an expert who comes and sits down in front and goes, "Oh, he's left brain dominant. We think he's a bit slow, distracted.
Yeah,
we'll put him in the special. We'll give him 15 minutes extra and his exams."
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and then as a kid, you're like, "Oh, that adult says that, so therefore
you believe
that must be right."
And so it's something like 10% of the population are dyslexic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, and 80% are prisoners. I mean, I've heard it's between 50 to 80% of prisoners are dyslexic. So why is that then? And it's like public school failed me completely. The only support I was given was 20 minutes extra on my exams at the end.
Yeah, I don't think I even got any support like that at all. I think I feel like with my at secondary school, I had one or two teachers that were quite good, but the school in general kind of brushed me aside.
And the best I've ever been able to like articulate to someone who's non-dyslexic what it's like to be dyslexic, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but when I'm trying to read something, it's like trying to do like a really complicated maths equation. Yes, when people say, "Oh, like words are jumping out of the screen or the page, and you can't find your place," it takes me forever to read anything.
Yes,
I mean, have you tried it with the dyslexic paper?
I have, like coloured film. I've tried those sort of things. They don't help me.
Oh,
those.
Really?
Yeah.
I found there was a thing where it's like if the first letter is capitalised and the last letter is capitalised.
See, there's recently come out this new font that helps dyslexia, and I wish I could remember what it's called now. But I found that really helpful, where it was all the letters aren't of the same. In a word, all of the letters are almost pretty much in a certain order, but a different font. And I find that easier to read. I find that easier to follow than if they're all the same font. It's almost I find it hard. I get completely lost on a page. But yeah, I saw this font recently, and it's not on any of like the Word or Pages documents yet, this font, but it will be. Yeah. Because it is, lots of people are finding it beneficial.
I think having a disabled father as well. I mean, seeing how he was successful in life, and how we always had clothes on our back, we always had food on the table. Like my dad was, I'm so proud of him, and seeing how he handled his disability. My dad had this like tenaciousness, this just like, "What, you think I can't do it because I'm deaf? Watch me." And he was so like cool about things, just head first into everything, no fear, nothing like that. And watching my dad like that, and then having a spell cast on me by my school, dyslexic, difficult, doesn't pay attention, I'm like, well, my dad was successful. My dad managed it. I learned hard work from the coal miners in my family. And what you were talking about, the foundations, what builds you, what creates you. I tell a lie, I had one good experience at school. And oddly, it was a music teacher. Her name was Mrs. Trainer. She was a Scottish lady. And I was in year 3, and we went on a school trip to Warwick Castle, and we all had disposable cameras, and we had to take pictures.
They were good back in the day. Those
disposable cameras.
Yeah.
We did it more, didn't we?
Yeah,
we lost it.
Yeah.
The iPhone has stolen it.
Yeah.
But
you got their moments on a disposable camera, didn't you?
Yeah. But yeah, we had to take pictures of Warwick Castle, and my pictures all came back like symmetrical, perfect, and neat, and compared to everyone else's anyway. And she gave me 20 house points. It was the most I think I'd ever known anyone to get, and she made such a big deal out of the fact that I'd done this thing, and it was the only thing I'd ever been told, "You were good at that." So I always had this thing like, you're good at taking pictures, and she effectively cast a spell on me as well.
Yeah.
You're going to be a photographer. And she said to my parents, she was like, your kid will be a photographer one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was spooky that I did, but I grew up kind of having this in the back of my head. Like, my dad was all right. I might be dyslexic, but I'm good at taking pictures. So that's maybe I'll do filming, I'll do that. And like, really similar story to you though. I went to college, had dyslexic support, and like a reader and a writer and all that. And I was, the best test results I've ever got. Like, I'm, A stars and everything. And I just thought, I was so like, had such a chip on my shoulder. Like, I was like, man, like, I got proper let down there by the school system. What a waste of my time. The time when I was at my most, malleable.
Most vulnerable. Malleable. The time that you
most potential.
Yeah, that you should be being shaped in the right direction. But I don't think the school system, without getting too political, I don't think, especially back in our day, is set up for necessarily to have a creative life. It's set up to kind of put you. Well, it was set up to get you into the factories, to get you into the workplace. To get you to be part of a system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And things like photography, directing, producing, acting, writing, it doesn't really fit in the system, does it?
No.
It doesn't fit in the system, but at the same time, it's.
Do you remember the first time you met a creative who was making a living from it?
Mm-hmm.
I specifically remember this guy, his name was Timothy Donaldson, and he was a font maker. And I met him at Stafford College, and I joined to do photography, but they made you do this like taster thing where you do a bit of this and you do a bit of that, and then you decide which course you want to do. I knew I wanted to do photography. And he was so like content and so like happy, and he was so different. He thought really outside the box. And whenever I'd ask him a question, I think I was in his classroom for maybe like a month. And I remember being like, I'm privileged to be in a room with this guy. And it felt like he was there just to, like he was there to teach and to inspire and everything like that. But it felt as if
there was something more.
Yeah, there was like a sparkle about him, and I wanted it. I was like, why is he different to all the other teachers? And it was almost like he didn't actually need to be there. He was already successful in his own little world, but he was there teaching because he had this urge to share knowledge, it felt. And I remember him in particular and being like, okay, well, he's working class. I'm from a working class background, and he makes fonts. Like, he's not doing anything, like there's no manual labor in that. So I knew it was possible then. Yeah. I was like, I've met somebody. It was the first time I met someone that was making a living out of just being creative. And how you were saying, like, we get put into these schools, these what's the word?
Institutions.
Yeah. That's my dyslexia.
No, I have this same thing. If you listen to these, you'll hear me stumbling over words all the time. And I actually found this recently. Like, I didn't know that was stumbling over words or not being able to pronounce the words was linked to the dyslexia until recently. I went to an audition. It was just before COVID. I was in an audition room, and the lady said, "I'll stop you there for a sec." She said, "Any chance you're dyslexic?" And I was like, yes. She said, "It's not because you're reading bad, but your pronunciation is off. And I'm dyslexic, and that's something that I do. Yeah, okay. That I struggle with the pronunciation of, or finding the correct word at the correct time."
Yeah, see, I wanted to be an interpreter when I was a kid. Because of my dad, I was like, if I don't do photography, I'll be an interpreter. But because of my dyslexia, I was like, I can't spell. I can't pronounce words properly. And it does makes funny moments, doesn't it, when you say something wrong and everyone someone has to correct you, especially when it's...
Oh, my kids are doing it to me all the time. They're picking me up on words and and they just it's just a running joke that's me. But I think you got, like I said, leaning into that, not afraid of that anymore. I think it helps actually that it's a big used as a joke.
Yeah.
You know,
going back to what you were saying about the factories and the schools. I think it's sorry,
I don't think it's all so when I talk about the schools, I think there are some fantastic teachers out there.
There is.
Absolutely fantastic teacher.
Yeah.
I'd probably say even the majority of them are fantastic, and they really want the best for kids. But from what I've seen from my experience of being in a public school and the experience of my children being at a public school, I can see it doesn't always bring out the best in them. Didn't bring out the best in me. And at the moment, there's a statistic of 1 in 5 children aren't going to school. And it's the worst it's ever been in history, throughout the schooling history. A lot of that's linked to COVID, but I'd also say it's linked to the way that the system is built. It's maybe because we all had this pause time and these children had this pause from being at school. They're struggling to go back into that system that's not working for them. Yeah,
that's right. I listened to I'm trying to remember his name who said it, but it's slipping me. But it was what we value in these systems. Like, it was Jordan Peterson, that was it, and he was describing how being a creative, like we create there's a system that exists, and when you're a dyslexic or like a creative, someone that's a little bit on the edge, if you don't fit into that system, you have to create your own system. And it's really hard to like evaluate your success. It's really hard to evaluate whether you're doing things right, because the system doesn't fit in you. So when you take the system that's designed for everyone else and you put it up to yourself or your kids or whatever who might be creative or whatever, it's difficult to evaluate them and say, oh, they're doing all right. Because we have to create our own system, our own rules, don't we? Especially being like freelance. But yeah, what they were saying though was that science, because I think mathematics and science is celebrated, isn't it? And they were saying that science helps us understand the world. We all know that. But art creates a world in which helps us understand the world. So like we can create a little world with our art, and then it gives other people a different perspective, isn't it? And we can look into that and see. And it's almost like we don't encourage creativity in the school system. Like it's not like we push science and mathematics, but when it comes to art, we don't. It's
I think one of the problems is governments want to measure things.
Yeah, and how do you measure it?
And how do you measure the benefit of art?
Yeah.
And again, and it's I've talked about this recently on the podcast. A lot of people, the funding is being stripped from the arts a lot at the moment, because again, you can't measure the benefit. But I don't think everything in this life is measurable, is it?
Well, no, it's not. Well, it
is and it isn't. But it's like you have to look at a perspective on it. So you look at like the way that communities are failing. That you look at a place, a town, a city, and you go, that place looks dead. Everyone feels unalive, don't they? Or you go to another place and you're like, oh, it's vibrant here. And what is it that makes it alive and vibrant?
It's actually the creatives. It really is. Because when I moved to London from my hometown, I'm from Stafford, like a little mining town near Staffordshire. When I moved to London, it felt like it was like moths to a light bulb, like with creatives. We're all there just bouncing off the light bulb, and a lot of us are getting our wings burnt and we fizzle off. I think I remember hearing someone say once that a successful creative person who's making a living from it is almost as rare as a marathon winner. How many people enter a race and then how many people win it? So how many successful creative people are there? So that's
and you can just look at like I know a lot about acting. So for instance, with acting, it's in the UK alone, it's something like 100,000 kids come out of drama school every year and go into the industry. Now, out of that 100,000 kids, only 1-2 of them are going to get a job.
Yeah, who's going to make it to Hollywood?
Yeah, 1-2 out of 100,000. So the odds are stacked against you to make a living and to be in the system. But does that mean you still can't have a creative life just because you don't get to the top?
No, because I think it depends what you're creating for. So like if you're creating art just for you, it's an outlet. It's like you said earlier, like when you're in that flow state, when you're actually just producing something, it's a privilege. It's like it's blissfulness. It's like it's this gift to the universe. You know, that's what you're doing it for. I think it was Wagner, the orchestra guy.
Yeah.
He was the first person to ever turn his back to the audience. Before that, the orchestra guy would perform. I mean, how stupid is that? So he's got the orchestra here.
Yeah,
and he would be performing
because
facing.
I guess the idea was at first this is for
It's
the
a
audience.
performance,
It's
yeah.
a performance for the audience.
And he turned his back to the audience and said, I'm not interested in what the audience think. I've got to focus on my art, which is making sure these guys are all playing. I don't care about them. And I think when you're creating art and you're in that flow state, you're not thinking about whether people think it's good or whether they like it or not. And that, I think, it's because monetizing your creativity complicates things. It makes it messy. It makes it's a bit distracting.
Yes.
Because if we're focusing on trying to make money, then we compromise ourselves a little bit, or we make decisions that we wouldn't normally do, and we get other people's opinions in, and the audience don't want to. Okay, we need to have 4 of these. We need to have. Okay, well,
and then we start sacrificing the message for the promoters, and it starts to become someone else's thing, doesn't it?
So that's money interfering with it. But I think when you're creating something, just for the love of it, that's why we should be doing it. And if you can make money out of it,
bonus.
amazing, yeah. And I can only look back on my experiences and the times when I've been my most creative and I've been in that flow state and I've just been making something for the love of creating art. That's when I've been my happiest, and that's also given me the most success. So when I was 18, 19, I had this idea. It came to me. I was like, I'm going to go to a field. I'm going to get this red umbrella and I'm going to throw it around in the sky. I'm going to get my tripod. I'm going to do a big composition. And I photoshopped in all these like crows, had all these like umbrellas flying around in the sky. And I entered it into a competition. And I ended up winning like an award and getting flown out to photograph Maroon 5. And I was like, whoa, cool. Me sitting in a field throwing an umbrella around led to that. I didn't know that was going to happen. But the thing is, I never created it originally for that.
No,
I created that because like what Rick Rubin says, it's a gift to the universe. I was just I'm just making something,
and then something sometimes comes back to us, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you do things without any sort of like motive, like just like
it is. It's really hard though not to have the motives, because we do live in the system, don't we? We do live in the world where we have to pay our rent. We want to be able to put petrol in the car, food on the table.
Yeah.
We want to go on holidays, and so we're in the system. So how do we continue to make it fit in?
How do we get it to fit in?
Yeah, how are you getting it to make it? Because as creators, we're not. Some of us are lucky to be employed continuously. Some of us are not so lucky. I haven't been that lucky.
Yeah.
Spits and spurts here and there.
Yeah.
So but in the in-between times, what do we do?
You have to focus on what got you there. Like, so whenever I have those moments of doubt or things aren't working quite right, I just take myself back. Right, what worked before? So like, for example, that umbrella thing that I was talking about, it led to like a massive opportunity. So me just creating something gave me that opportunity. Here's another example. A friend of mine, we approached this farm, and we offered them. They were they were called the Great British Farm Project. It doesn't exist now, sadly. And what they would do is it was a couple, and they would rescue farm animals that were going to be slaughtered, and they would just give them like a a place to live, and
Right.
they wouldn't kill them. So they
Okay.
rescued like 500 battery
Mm-hmm.
hens. They rescued a bunch of pigs and some horses that had been abused, and they bring them in. Very, very hard job to do,
Mm-hmm.
and just give them like a retreat. It's just a rest. You know, we're not gonna hurt you. You just stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my friend were like, this is an awesome cause. We should help them. And it's like, we can give them £100, or we can create them something. So we created them a calendar. So we approached them and said, look, we're going to do portraits of all of your animals, and we're going to take a studio up there, and I'm going to do portraits of like your chicken, and then a pig, and then a goat, and what have you.
Yeah.
And then we're going to create you a calendar,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to make you money. And
you did this as like you did this
for free.
for free.
For free.
This was a passion project.
Yeah, and I think that then ended up getting me some unbelievable opportunities, but I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because I'm like, right, well, things are slow. I need some inspiration. I'm going to go back to what worked for me in the past, which was not caring about the audience, getting into that flow state, and just creating art, and just using my art as a gift. You know, so I gifted that farm. Hey, here's a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And I used my connections at Live Nation, because I was doing at the time I was working a lot with McFly, the boy band,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd recently made a calendar with them. So I asked Live Nation, will you create me the calendar for me? And they were like, what a great cause. And they donated something like, I think it was like 2,000 of these calendars.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like proper professional, you know, like
Yes,
real deal. And so I think if I wouldn't do anything, I don't think you have to, I would try and avoid concentrating on money. And I know that's really difficult
Mm-hmm.
when your survival, your children's survival, I can see how that's complicated. Maybe I'm speaking from a privileged place because I don't have children yet.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, the place I'd always go from was always resort to whatever worked before, be creative, put some stuff out into the world and just see what happens. It's like, you just have to interact with it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm kind of learning from you is that you put out into the world, and you tend to get something back.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this.
Mm.
So when you approached me about this, I thought, yeah, cool. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's like a ripple effect, isn't it?
Yes. And it spreads out there.
Yeah, and then you don't know what's going to come back to you. You don't know. I mean, this is definitely out of my comfort zone. I've never done a podcast before.
Yeah, it's out of my comfort zone too.
Yeah. And
but it's really what it is. If you take away, like we're talking about the audience, you take away the audience. All this is me and you having a conversations about the things that we're about, about the things that are meaningful to our lives. That, you know, we're just me and you having a conversation at the end of the day.
Do you find doing podcasts to think about what the viewer is perceiving? So you almost have to have like a conversation in like 3D, where it's you're hoping that you're saying the correct things. You're hoping you're being useful. You don't want to bore. You don't want to waste anyone's time. So
No.
you're like, it's an interesting place to put your mind, and I'm enjoying this experience.
I think I'm naturally inquisitive.
Yeah. Same.
I naturally, you said one of your things about you, you're curious. So when you're talking, I want to learn. Yeah. I think as well why I enjoy listening to podcasts is I enjoy listening to other people's conversations and taking something from that.
Would you say you're an auditory learner?
Yes, definitely.
Dyslexic, same.
Yes, yeah, definitely. When I first got into acting, when I joined like a youth theatre company, I couldn't read off the page, and I realised quite quickly I was learning from listening to everybody else, and I was doing my best to keep up, but really I was learning what was going on was by listening. And the director, he was a massive influence on my life, Lawrence. He discovered that as well, that it was about reading to me, and I would very quickly pick it up.
Do you feel like it's almost like it's like a a super, like, not, I don't know if a superpower is the right word, but because you're dyslexic, it's almost like you might kind of suck at some
I see
things.
it now as my gift.
Yeah.
I see it now as my gift. I see it now as my brain works differently.
Yeah.
You know, young in my early days of life, that was a hindrance. But as I've learned to embrace it, like I feel like I'm doing now, then as I'm embracing it, I'm finding my place where I fit in and finding my purpose. For a long time, I wanted my purpose to be acting, but actually that wasn't completely my thing. I think finding this has become my purpose. All the acting that I did led to be able to do this. You know, I needed them skills through the acting to be able to have this moment now.
Yeah, because it prepares you for it. It's almost like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Exactly. And it's all how we were saying before, like those past failures, maybe things that you didn't quite get right or whatever, you learn from those. Yeah, well, hopefully.
Me definitely. I didn't feel like I was, like I said early on within this, I didn't feel like I was, and that led to, you know, life being having the midlife crisis moment. That led to that, and but having that moment to actually go, no, I've learnt from that. I learnt from the mistakes, and now I can build upon all that. And sometimes it's realised, that's quite an interesting point to raise. At some point, for a long time, I wanted to be an actor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing that was right for me.
It could have been an ingredient in a bigger thing,
in a bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't know what the future has 5 years from now.
No,
I mean, look at it like this. I mean, when like the internet was first born, you know, we didn't all sit down as a globe, as like humanity, and went, right, listen, this is going to come with some problems, but it's also going to be pretty awesome. So like, porn's going to be pretty bad. Social media is going to suck. But we're going to be super connected, and you're going to be able to get your shopping delivered to your door. You know, like...
Yeah, and again, we're going to make a lot of mistakes with it.
Yeah.
And mistakes are still being made. But, we're in the early days of it still, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're still discovering it.
Yeah, and think about all those opportunities and jobs that have appeared that nobody knew about before the internet. And then you take what we're going through right now, which is AI, and it's like... It's basically the internet again. And, you know, like, there are some people out there that are kind of waving the warning flag, being like, guys, we need to talk about some of the bad things that might come with this, because we didn't do that with the internet. Because I don't remember getting the memo that porn and social media was going to devastate everyone.
Yeah, and be careful on MSN Messenger.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was no warning there where you was chatting to anyone across the world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Or like, you know, how to you know, secure your data and stuff. It's like all these things we're unaware of, but it's a double-edged sword, and it's going to bring us so many opportunities, and so many new things will come out of this. And so you're right, like, you maybe the destiny wasn't for you to be an actor, but those things were going to lead you to something greater than that.
Yes,
yeah.
And you don't see it, do you? You don't see it when you're in the like I say, I take from my perspective, an actor going through the audition process where you go and audition for a big TV series, and you spend 3 weeks thinking that this is going to be your moment, and then it's not, and then you can't figure out how you're going to put food on the table because you've been pursuing this silly thing. And so when you're in that time, it's hard to go, this isn't for me.
How do you like manifest in those moments? Because I think, from my understanding and my experience of manifesting is putting like just complete belief into this. Like, this is going to happen. Like, and mantras, you know, like telling yourself like positive affirmations, being like, no, this is my goal and this is where we're heading. I'm going to achieve this. And when you're like, I guess your destiny is kind of put into the hands of a casting director, and they're just like, nope.
That's kind of where I started to realise this isn't for me. It's more not that I stopped enjoying acting. I've done some acting recently. I love it. It's a passion of mine. I think I will still always do it because I have a love for it.
Yeah.
But where I started to go, this isn't how I want to live my life, is where I started to look at it and go, I'm literally giving my life to the decision making of others. to going to people and going, this is me, this is what I do you like me, do you not like me? And I did that for 20 years. And that's where I went, no, that's not what I want for the rest of it. I don't want to keep asking people, do you value my talent? Do you want me to be part of your project? No, I've got projects I want to run. And I'm going to run, and I'm going to do things for...
Yeah.
I like that, do things for the universe. I wanted to say do things for me, but I don't even feel like it's that. I'm putting my thing there now. I'm putting my talent, if you like, my gift out there.
Yeah. Well, that's what great artists do. They put out stuff, and it enables people to see things differently. That's what great artists do. I mean, I mentioned earlier Deschamps. I've always lived with artists. Like, I used to live in a warehouse with like a Croatian experimental jazz band. You know, like I went to chaos. I wanted to surround myself with the most extrovert, most creative, even actually introvert as well. Like, just so I got like imagine living in a warehouse and you went into the dining room and you have an idea or you've got a philosophy and you announce it. You get 12 different opinions back immediately, and they're all.
Is that something to do with putting yourself in the right kind of community?
Yeah.
Putting yourself in the right kind of space?
Yeah, you are the sum of the 6 people you spend the most time with. So if you surround yourself with 6 losers, you're going to be a loser. If you surround yourself with 6 millionaires, you're going to start feeling self-conscious and I need to become a millionaire. You know, and I surrounded myself with creatives. And what were we talking about before this? Before I got onto the.
We're talking about the journey of how we become a creative. I'm just in the moment right now.
Yeah,
so that's when you're in the moment. Sometimes it's hard to lose where you've been, isn't it?
There was living in those places though. It was
living. You were living in this community with these other creatives.
Yeah, and they always gave me something different to think about. There's always they always challenged me. There was it wasn't comfortable. You know, when you live with an experimental Croatian jazz band, I mean, even that. I mean, it's not melodic. It's mathematical. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it about Deschamps. Sorry. He put a toilet into an art gallery. Do you remember hearing this story?
No, go on.
So in I think it was like the maybe I think it was like the 1940s maybe. I'm not very good with dates, but he put a toilet into an art gallery in New York, and the art exhibition was it was a free for all. Anyone could submit their art, and you had all the kind of classic art and paintings and sculptures and stuff, and he just plonks in a porcelain toilet, and then signed it with some it wasn't really his name. He did some, I think it was Hut or something like that, or Mutt, J Mutt or J Hut. He sticks this in the art gallery, and they were just like, "This is an art," and he was like, "Yes, it is. I said it is," and they're like, "No, it's not," and they put it behind a curtain and hid it, and it radically changed art forever. From that moment on, because it became so subjective then. You know, he was like, "Well, why is it not art?" And they're like, "Well, it's a toilet." And he's like, "So? I said it's art. It's my art. Look, I drew on it. Now I've created it." And they're like, "So does that mean it's not art?" And, you know, those moments in art, it gave how many artists then completely saw the world differently. You know, it's like, what's his name? Mondrian? He's the guy who'd done the squares. You know, the famous painting, which is it's like a red square, blue square, yellow square, white, and it's all lines.
No, I can't sound familiar with this.
But
It's one of them things if I see it,
super famous. It's one of the most iconic paintings ever. And one of his most famous paintings it's titled Tree.
Okay.
You look at it and you're like, it's not a tree. It's like a bunch of squares. But he saw the world in squares and in pixels. He was like, no, this I've zoomed in to this as far as I can possibly go, and that represents a tree. And you think about, once you see Mondrian's art, you see it everywhere. You see squares and everything. I mean, you know, the light switch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a square.
Yeah.
It's like, well, where did that design come from? Why wasn't it a circle? Well, it was a square. Well, maybe that person was inspired by Mondrian. And it's like you go back and you see these moments in art where and like I say, an artist will put a toilet into an art exhibition, and it challenges everything. It makes everybody then have to hang on,
question the world, question the reality that we live in.
And it gives us like a completely new perspective on things. It changes there was one artist from Britain, her name's Tanya Harris, and she'd done this incredible thing. It's one of my favourite pieces of art, and she went into cathedrals and she recorded the ambience of the cathedral, and then played it back into so she would record the silence, then play the sound back into the church, and she would keep on doing this until she actually got a frequency, until she actually started picking up noises. And then what she was trying to do was record the frequency of the church. And how she did that was that she took the vibrations, put it into water, they created a cymatic shape, and then she turned that into a stone. So then when you look at that, now it's like this beautiful like snowflake type cymatic pattern. And she'd say, well, that is the pattern of this church. And when you see that the cymatic shape, before this art experiment that she did, my experience of churches were like, it's a church. It's a place of worship. When she did that, I started seeing cymatic shapes all over the church. I'm like, like the windows, they're all like cymatic shaped.
Right.
Oh, there's a bell in here. There's a organ. Wait, this is all to do with sound. Oh, wait, all this is mathematical. Oh, and then you think, hang on a minute, did they build this with sound as a feature of it? What does this mean? And her art experiment enabled me to experience a cathedral or a church in a completely different way. Then I started looking around being like, oh, hang on a second, there's more to this.
This right here, exactly what you're saying to me right here, you're saying to me how important creativity, art is within society, within life, and how important it is that we keep it. We spoke at the beginning about at school, how it's being drawn out of schools and how funding's going with the arts. This is why it's important. It isn't just about the thing that we're creating. It's about how we make people think differently.
Yeah, it is. And how do you stay creative?
How do I stay creative?
Yeah, like what tools do you use, or what type of methods have you got to remain creative or be the most creative you can be?
I guess it's a case of being persistent for me, being persistent in dedicating time to it. Because it's a solitary thing, isn't it? Like I say, trying to pursue acting or directing, you're quite solitary. So for me, the important thing is managing my time and making sure that within my life, if I have to go and do, I have to make money, if I have to go and do like a normal job for a little while or a side hustle, that if I'm doing that, I'd have time that I'm still part of something else. And for a long time, I was part of a amateur theatre company, and I run this building which we're in here as a community project. And so I'm making sure that within my life, I'm fitting in creative things, not necessarily like we said about making money. So yeah, I run this place as a charitable trust, as the chairman, making sure it's open and accessible to the local community, to amateur dramatic groups, to theatre schools to come here and use it. But I get involved here as much as possible, whether that be something like lighting or whether it be running the Christmas show. Last year I adapted Lion Witch and the Wardrobe. I adapted my own stage version, and I put that on here as a big fundraiser for the building, so that we could pay for the gas and electricity for another year. I gave up a good solid 6 months of 2023 for that project, whilst doing other side hustles, so that I could stay creative.
it's such an outlet, isn't it? It's like how, like I don't know what I would do if I wasn't able to be creative.
Yeah.
I really don't know what I'd do.
Yeah, and it concerns me about the future. It concerns me, you know, like I say, that the value within the creativity isn't seen by some.
But that's when you think about our most celebrated people. Think about the people that we push right to the top. They are actually they are the creatives. So Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Think of, you know, any musician.
You know,
Michael
so some
Jackson,
people,
Prince.
or some people might not like him, like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
You know, what he's doing is very, very creative.
And that's what I was saying earlier. It's like about the marathon race winner. There's only one Elon Musk. There's only one person that's ran that marathon and won it. That's one thing that I'm always like, I wish somebody would have told me this at the beginning before I decided to venture into being a photographer, is you're in a race now and your creativity is the thing that is the life force, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's good to compare it to a marathon. It's not a sprint.
No,
it is a long game. It's probably a life pursuit to be to dedicate it to some form of creativity, and you're there in that marathon with others as well. If you want to be one of the ones at the front, you're going to have to perhaps work a bit harder.
Yeah, you have to you've got to sacrifice.
You've got to make some sacrifices. You might not necessarily. We were talking about my daughter earlier, and whether she'll watch this and hear this back. And one of my perspectives on her life, sometimes she's a very talented guitar player, musician, and she's only 15, so I'm trying not to guide her too much. But I have said to her recently, you do have to consider the sacrifices of some friends that might not be good influences for what you want to achieve. Because not everyone's going to want the best for you. Not everyone's going to want you to be at the front of that race. Some people like you to be exactly where you are right now. So considering the people that you're around is a sacrifice for your art.
You almost have to like just not care. You really, like, I had haters. I've had people that it took me a long time to recognise them.
Yeah, because they might not come across as haters. They might be your best friend.
Like,
you know.
I think like I was so. I mean, my career was founded in the music scene, and I've picked up on rivalries between like bands. They'd be like, oh, you know.
And rivalries can be healthy sometimes.
They can be,
and unhealthy. but sometimes competition is good. It can be that little thing that you need to push you forward sometimes.
I learned a lot about the music industry working in it, and I think that's also something that is. I've been quite lucky and quite unique in the fact that I've worked in the fashion industry, I've worked in music, I've worked across a lot of these different industries. Yeah, and
you've worked for some big names as well, big names, big brands.
Yeah, so it's almost like you can see what is successful. You see from the behind the scenes, you actually see like the mechanics behind a lot of these projects, and you know, like watching a musician go from, you know, a couple of 100 plays, can't sell out a room, to like doing tours in New York and California and traveling Europe. It's you see what works and you see what doesn't work. There's a lot. I've worked with a lot of people that unfortunately didn't quite reach the heights that they were aiming for. But I mean, what's that saying? It's like aim for the stars and
you might reach the moon.
You might reach the moon. Yeah, exactly. You know. But yeah, like I say, you're seeing what worked and what didn't work for a lot of these artists. It's been really interesting, really eye-opening, because I've been able to... There's a lot of things that are like transferable skills, you know, like as in things that work in the music industry, things that work in the fashion industry that actually also translate into other industries. And because I've had that insight, I'm able to help my clients and say, well, this works for them. I know it's a different industry, but here's the logic behind it. Here's the reasoning behind it. But yeah, I love celebrating people's successes, though.
Yeah, no, that's something that's very important to me. I think, again, like having had that experience as an actor, there is a lot of competition, a lot of envy. I've seen a lot of people envious towards myself. And I've also been envious towards others. There was someone when I was coming up in the youth theatre group that was on similar kind of par with me, that we both wanted very similar things. I went off and had a family and kids, so my career had to it takes us, the things you want, you have to. For me, I had to put my kids first, and I went off and did like a proper job for a while. I worked in a bank, which was the worst 5 years of my life. Absolutely hated every minute of it. But I tried because I thought at that time that's what my children needed.
Stability.
They needed stability. They needed the money coming in, and and I wanted to be able to provide for them. But it was very hard. But whilst I was doing that as well, someone else that I know was starting to come up, and he was starting to get some good things on television, some good parts in programs, and there was some jealousy there from me. Like, I'm like, how the hell is he doing this? I was better than him. And he's doing it. I could have done it if I'd chose a different path. Looking back, the path that I had was the path that I needed to have, and I wouldn't not have kids. I would not have the life that I had. I wouldn't trade it for someone else's in a second. That's not the issue. But that jealousy is hard to not have. However, now I'll look at some people coming up, and I want nothing but the best for them. And I know an actress that's been on some great programs on TV as well, and she's really doing well in her career. And I look at her with great admiration and I feel like a sense of hope watching someone come up and do well instead of the jealousy. But you do have to find a mindset to change that round.
Yeah.
And also with the podcast, I'm trying to make the podcast not about me. I'm trying to make it about the creative that I'm sitting down with, and trying to have this is about you, and you can't have. It wouldn't work if there was jealousy. Yeah. It wouldn't work for me if I was envious of the person that I'm sitting down with.
Because I'm so curious about the world. I do actually when I've analysed myself, because it's almost like it's so strong in me to be curious about everything, and I do wonder if it's because of my dad, because of you're supposed to get my dad was abandoned pretty much when he was a kid. Like he had a really rough time as a deaf young man living in the UK. He was sent to a boarding school for the deaf where they handcuffed his hands to a table and tried to force him to speak. Can't hear, it was really, really tough. And because my dad didn't, the philosophy from a deaf man's very different, it's very, very different. So I grew up having to make mistakes a lot and trying to figure things out, and not really having a dad where I could speak to. I can still talk to him, but I can't turn to him and say, what do you think of this situation? Because his perception on it is completely unique because of him being deaf. And
I guess it had to be kind of factual stuff. You had to position everything that you.
It was very visual. Yes, it's all very visual. Talking to my dad about certain subjects, you just can't comprehend.
It's hard enough for parents as it is, because he grew up in a different time to you.
Yeah.
So it's hard for a parent without having that disability there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the reason why I was saying I wonder if my curiosity comes from my dad is because I had to figure out the world for him as well. So when I was young, I was having to be his interpreter. So his fan belt breaks on his car, I'm in the garage, I'm 7, but I'm having to be his interpreter, so I'm having to do adult things. I'm getting this responsibility. I'm like, okay. And when we're out, I've got to be his ears. I've got to listen out for him. And I think having that kind of hyper
awareness to the world.
An awareness and a I'm being very observant, and because I know that I have to figure things out myself. I ask questions a lot, so I think the curiosity that's led me to so many interesting places though, because I'm always asking questions. I'm always, why does that happen?
Going back to your photography, are you asking questions when you're doing that?
Yeah.
Are you asking questions?
Yeah. Well, when I photograph someone,
because I've seen your work, and it's got its unique,
thank you.
a unique touch to it. It is artistic. You're not just taking a picture, are you?
Yeah.
And I can see the questions you're asking within that.
Yeah.
I can see the art there.
Yeah. You're I spend a lot of my time on photo shoots talking to the person I'm photographing, because I'm so interested in them. And then once you figure out what makes them tick and why they're the way they are, why they've made these decisions, why they decided to wear those shoes, why they decided to pick that color, whatever, it's interesting. And I like delving into people and then I feel like that helps me interpret their vision better as well. I think I spend more time talking to people on shoots than I actually do photographing. I'm very quick when I'm on photo shoots.
Well, you're snapping an instantaneous moment, but how do you find that perfect moment?
Perfect moment. Yeah, that's a good question. How do you find perfect moments? I don't think there is perfect moments, because life isn't perfect. It's messy, actually. Life's really messy. It's complicated. So when you're looking for perfect moments, I suppose it's more like if you're trying to tell a story. If you're trying to tell a story, does the picture tell the story? And I think, or does it actually, does it articulate that person's vision, like visually? When we look at that picture, do we understand them? Do we feel something from it? And I think that's when you're creating something, that's the most important thing, is make people feel something. You want to have a reaction. You want people to feel something from it, or like how we were saying earlier, give them a different perspective, make them see the world in a different way. Give them, and that's what great artists do. They challenge you. They make you feel something. They make you think something. So that's my focus. I don't know if I'm ever really focused on creating capturing perfect moments. It's because sometimes like a really messy thing can be tell the story perfectly. Like I had the privilege once to meet a war photographer journalist, and I was looking through some of his photography. I mean, if you're looking at a picture of someone that's being shot, you wouldn't go, that's a perfect moment, because it's quite horrific, actually. I think that, but it tells a story, doesn't it? And it made me feel something, and I connected to it, and then now I understand something, or I see the world from that perspective, and that's probably the thing that I focus on more, really, and I suppose that creates a perfect moment in a way,
Have you seen the film The Secret Life of Walter Mitty? The new Ben Stiller one, not the old version.
Remind me.
It's got Ben Stiller, Sean Penn. Basically Ben Stiller's job is to put the picture of photographers in this magazine, but he's lost the bit of film, so he has to go out into the world and find the photographer whilst he's on his travels.
No, but it sounds interesting.
As a photographer, you must see the film.
Yeah.
It's an amazing film, but it talks very much about there's a moment with Sean Penn where he's going to take a picture of this leopard, and he's watching the leopard, waiting for the perfect moment, and Ben Stiller finds him, and I don't want to spoil it now, how you've just described how there isn't a perfect moment, but you're trying to capture that story. It very much the film is kind of about that and that message.
There was a New York taxi driver photographer. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but if you ever Google taxi driver photographer New York, he basically had a whole career out of photographing everything from the driver's seat, from what it's like to be a New York taxi driver. Right. So he's got people kissing in the back, he's got people having a street fight, he's got a woman being splashed by someone spilling a coffee on, really like dramatic stuff, but always from the perspective of his car seat, and there's moments there where they're like, it's not technically perfect, because you see there's a moment in the back maybe where there's two people snogging, and kissing or whatever, and he's took that picture, and it's a bit blurry, it's a bit out of focus, but that adds adds a feeling to it, adds a moment in time. Like you can tell that it was a moment that was done.
Rather than staged, rather than
and it's see, with photography, there's this when we talk about like a perfect picture, sometimes the aesthetics add to that story. You know, like because it's out of focus, because it's slightly blurry, because it's not quite perfect, it makes it perfect. But isn't that what life is? You know, it is imperfect.
Yeah.
And wouldn't we all say, like, I'm sure we'll all agree that if life was completely perfect here and on this planet right now, if we had heaven on earth and it was just brilliant all the time, and we wouldn't learn anything, we wouldn't have any experiences. I think sometimes like the imperfections of life actually give us the story. It gives us the growth. It gives us the
and it allows people an opportunity to see what the art truly is, or even see who you are as well. We talked about, before this started, we talked about being authentic, didn't we, briefly before the podcast? And I was we touched on that, about how when you're being authentic, you find the right people, the right people find you, and you're surrounded by the right people. And I guess that's the same when you take that picture, when it's an authentic picture. The right people see it, or the right people have an emotion with it. Whether it's technically right, whether it's, you know, whether you're in focus perfectly, that kind of almost doesn't matter. And with this podcast, when little things might go a little bit wrong, I feel like I'd really, you know, like to keep in that moment at the beginning.
Let's do it.
Where we were like, we don't know where we are. we were both like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Hold on, how's this working? Oh, we can hear ourselves. You know, but that shows that it's true.
Yeah, it's real. It's authentic. Yeah.
And people will relate to that.
Yeah.
There will be more people will relate to that than there being a crisp, perfectly clean presentation.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why I started putting these out as uncuts, because I had this whole idea of, you know, let's look at some other people that are doing these podcasts, like Stephen Bartlett, and he cuts them up in very much like a documentary style, and they are very entertaining and multi-cameraed, and that's great for entertainment, but you don't always connect with the guest. Whereas I'm almost feeling like this, on one camera, a microphone each, we're seeing who you truly are.
Yeah.
You know, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, there isn't.
You know, and why should we?
Yeah.
Why should you hide it within that moment when you're taking a picture?
Yeah. Speaking of authenticity, there's been times in the past where I've been experimenting, and there's a saying. It's like, great artists create, good artists copy, and I've certainly been great, but I've also been good. Sorry, you know, like there's moments where I've just created something because I'm in that flow state and it's for me. But then there's been times where I've been like, oh, that's cool, I'm going to do something similar.
Well, it's inspiration, is it not?
It is, but then when you do that, if you like, for example, like let's say I saw something iconic, an old amazing photograph from like the 1980s, and I brought it into today, I remixed it and put my own little spin on it, and I did my take on that style of photograph. I'm a good artist. I'm not a great artist when I do that. You know, like I've remixed something. It's like the Prodigy, or like Linkin Park. You know, like they mashed together two genres of music.
Yes, yeah.
Something that was iconic, something that was good. They put it together and they made this. And it's like, are they take Oasis. Oasis are a poor man's Beatles. I'm not saying they're bad, but the Beatles they are the great artists. Oasis are the good artists. You know, they copied, and nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, but it's and like I say, I've experimented with that with myself, but there is something authentic about the Beatles. When you listen to the Beatles, there is that authenticity. When you listen to Oasis, it's like there is moments of greatness in there, but you always go, I wonder how they would have sounded if the Beatles never existed. How would I?
Well, they wouldn't have existed. They wouldn't have existed.
Exactly.
We know that.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
No, it's not.
You know, Oasis are brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, you know, it might not be everyone's music, but no, they are very talented for sure. And I wouldn't say that we should stop art for not being new, because that's a thing that stops a lot of people starting, is going in the beginning stages. Well, someone else has already done this before.
Yeah.
Why should I try and be a musician?
Yeah.
Because the Beatles have been.
Yeah.
So should I bother?
Yeah.
Because I might not be able to be the Beatles. So shall I just not do this now?
I'm friends with a guy who's a singer-songwriter, and when John Mayer released Continuum, I was speaking to him. This was way back when, and he turned to me and he said, "There's no point. There's no point in me doing this anymore. That's the best album that's ever been written. I make similar music to that. I'm never going to beat that." And I do remember being like, wow, like that's so hard lined, just to be like, I'm going to give up on this career because I can't beat that. I'm going to he still pursues music, but he's gone down. He gave up the dream of being like singer-songwriter, purely out of the greatness of this John Mayer album. And I've always been fascinated by it, like that reaction to it. I was like, wow, like he really just threw the towel in. But
because we don't know what's in the future, do we? We don't know if we continue to persist with our art that it's not going to lead to something new. Having used these inspirations, how they won't transform into something, because the Beatles for sure had inspiration from music prior to them.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, they went out there and sought inspiration, didn't they?
Yeah.
For Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah. Oh, in India, where
they went off and looked for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Start anew, and they did start anew with that, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean the Beatles before psychedelics and the Beatles after psychedelics is two different bands, isn't it? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Yellow Submarine, it's like they were definitely on acid.
Yeah,
you know, like what was that about?
Yeah.
But it would you say they were more creative after that, though?
Well,
do you think
experimental?
Yeah.
Yeah, and is experimental being more creative? Yes. Yes, I'd say in some senses, yes.
They were pushing the boundaries.
They're pushing the boundaries for what they could do. Yeah, and I think that's hugely important, because then that's allowed inspiration for other musicians to not just stick with because at that time when the Beatles came out, there was of course a lot of copycat type bands that would copy what they would go, oh look, they're success, and they may have had some success within themselves, but I can't name one of those copycat bands off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But it's still very, very important. And even to some degree, some of the modern day bands still continue to copy kind of what they did. But at some point, someone else new will come along.
Yeah,
something else new will come along.
It's so interesting when like someone brings out something completely fresh, and often it will be they'll take something that's worked in the past and remix it. And like bring and infuse it with a new, like a different,
new time.
Yeah, like Linkin Park. That was they took metal and like mixing decks and hip hop, and they mashed the two together. I think the first person ever to do that was probably Aerosmith and AC/DC with like Walk This Way. You know, it was like hip hop and rock.
Yeah,
got together and created this, and it was like, whoa, what is this? This is brand new.
I guess I feel, I might be wrong,
Yeah.
I might be not keeping up to date so much with music these days, but I feel like there isn't anything out there at the moment that's kind of pushing the boundaries. I feel like it's all kind of quite safe out there at the moment in the music industry.
There isn't a scene. Like when I was, I mean, I'm embarrassed by the emo scene, because I think it was quite, it was a bit feeble. It seemed a bit like it was whiny, even though I was part of photographing it. But it had its moment.
Yeah, I mean, it had its moment, and and you know, we looked to. Are you saying you're embarrassed because you embraced that?
I just don't think it was cool as punk.
No,
punk was way cooler. Like when I see the pictures of the punks, I'm like, oh, they look cool, man.
Yeah,
and then I look at like the emos, and I'm like, oh, like we weren't as cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't seem to have like a scene at the moment, or maybe I'm too old and I'm unaware of it and I'm out of touch. But I think electronic music's pushing interesting boundaries, and
well, Swifties seem to be the scene, don't they?
Yeah,
seems to be
but isn't she just a that don't impress me much? What was that lady's name?
Oh, Shania Twain.
Isn't she just the Shania Twain copy?
Yeah, I guess, like I say,
Clone.
it's safe. You know, and I actually shared something the other day where there was a concert and people were booing Taylor Swift, and I don't think there's a place to like boo it just because it's safe.
Yeah.
You know, I think she's definitely, you know, she's got a following and she's definitely a creative and she's got an art form and she's a good singer and she's a musician that plays live. That's very important.
Yeah.
Because there's a music industry out there that wants to do everything as cheaply as possible.
Have you ever done live improv stuff?
Yeah, recently.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And what's the difference between doing it live and record? Like, what's the biggest difference for you when you're recording something and doing it live?
Very much going back to that flow state.
Yeah.
It's very. There's almost like a gift within theatre.
Uh-huh.
That you have no choice but to be in the moment if you're to do your thing. If you're to present your art form, your craft, you must be in the moment. The audience are there. You can't say, can we pause, can we stop, can we retake? Whereas film, television, you have got the camera looking at you, but you've often got other people doing their own thing and people are not necessarily paying attention to you because you've got the cameraman's making sure the camera's working, you've got the sound man making sure the sound's working, you've got the tea boy making the tea, do you know, and you've got all these different things going on. So it's quite easy, and I've seen some big names say, can we pause and can we restart? Because it's too easy to come out of flow. Within film and TV. And in fact, recently, a couple of years ago, there was a video surfaced of Dennis Quaid. Growing up, he was one of my favourite actors. I didn't know why, but I really enjoyed a Dennis Quaid film. But there was a thing recently where he was on set and he just said, everyone just stop. Because I can't do my thing if you're fiddling over there making cups of tea, you're sweeping the floor. I need to be in this moment. If you want me to act, allow me to be now, here. You just stand still. Yeah? When you're on stage, you've got that audience sitting there and you can't stop, so you have to be in flow. So coming back to that, your question, recently I was... I did this play in a day thing. It was at a fringe theatre pub in Islington, and we had 4 hours with this new script. It was essentially doing this play was for the benefit of the writer, so people could see a new play by this writer. An audience of 70 people, paying audience of 70 people. But before I walked out onto the stage, I thought, "Fuck! Like, how am I gonna do this? Or how am I going to?" And it was a mixture between having you could have the script in your hand and improvisation because it was all happening so quick. But we put on this whole play within like 4 hours, paying audience, and it worked because we found flow state.
I think improv acting is so interesting to me. I love watching improv. I love watching it. I love the not knowing what's going to happen next. Yeah. Like it feels so alive. Yeah.
It takes a certain amount of confidence to get there. It takes a certain amount of work to be able to... I don't think anyone wakes up and goes, "Oh, I can do improvisation." I think you have to practice it. Well, like with any craft, don't you? You do have to practice.
Yeah. 10,000 hours, as they say. Yeah.
You can't just wake up and go, "Today I'm going to be doing this." And yeah, the more you put your brain into that state of being able to think on the spot, the easier it's gonna.
So what kind of things?
Be.
How would stand-up comedy be a thing that you would do to practice?
Me personally, I haven't done that yet.
No.
I've never found myself to be a naturally. I think going back to that thing of we've all got like individual gifts.
Yeah.
I've never found myself to be naturally funny. Again, my kids laugh at me. Like there is a sense of humour that I've got, but perhaps not one that I've found to do in front of
an audience.
Because whereas some people will have that. I know people. I had someone on here the other day, a long-time friend, and he's just naturally a clown. Like that's how he's
He's
like
an entertainer.
he's an entertainer. He's like this is. I'm a clown first.
Mm-hmm.
That is me, you know. My modern interpretation of that is I play the guitar and I act in pantomimes. But you know, if it had been 150 years ago, he would have been a clown. You know, that's who he is.
Do you, the role of a clown was to I think it's in the Viking times, maybe, I think, where the role of like a clown was like, if you can't mock something, if it can't be mocked, then that person's ego is out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So they had in like a clown, like a person that was there to mock. I'm sure it was the Vikings that had a person that filled that role, and it was like everyone was fair game.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment that somebody got offended and got angry at the fact they were being mocked, it was like, you're out of control, your ego's too big, you need to be humbled, we need to deal with you because we're not able to mock you. Humour though, isn't it? It's
and I guess that's like the beginnings of like the court jester then, isn't it?
If you can't laugh about something, then
yeah, it's really interesting that the subject's gone onto that, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like we've talked a lot about manifesting and like the universe and setting out paths for us, and you know, sometimes like I question things myself. So I've had this thing about finding playing cards at certain moments in my life. Individual ones.
Like David Blaine around, is he just doing tricks on the street?
Yeah,
just
like
finding his cards everywhere.
Yeah, and there's been some crossroads in my life where just before those crossroads happen, I find a card.
Do you believe in numerology?
Numerology.
Yeah.
What's that? Numerology
is the Freemasons and stuff practice it. It's like it's they do things on particular dates, like your name.
Okay.
So so like, for example, they'll name their child with a numerology in the letters, and it will add up to a number, and they'll be like, oh, that child's a life path 33 or a life path 11, and then it's numerology. It's kind of, it's mathematics. I mean, the universal language of the universe is mathematics. Like 1 + 1 = 2 everywhere in the universe.
Yeah.
So like mathematics is the truest form of language. It's the oldest, most ancient, and there's people that will who believe in it so much that they'll have a child born. They'll force a cesarean or force a child to be born on a particular date because they believe that, you know, having a child born on the 21st or whatever means that child is going to be XYZ in life.
Yeah,
or whatever.
And I've had someone on here recently that a musician that she tries to live her life by the lunar cycle. So I guess that's quite similar.
Yeah,
like she feels that there's blessings within certain points of the lunar cycle.
Yeah. The numerology, like, some people take it so seriously. It's only something I've recently looked into because I was like.
So where do you feel like this me finding cards? So I wanted to say about finding this card. So I've literally got it just over there. I found a jester card, a joker card, and it just links to this conversation just so much that you then then bring it up. And each time I find one of these cards, I think this is like the fourth or fifth significant card that I've stumbled across. Each of them have happened at a specific moment in my life, and I've not always known it at the time.
So that number, have you looked into the significance?
Yes.
Okay, so that's numerology.
Yeah.
So they'll be like,
well, a joker is anything. It's not a number. You know, if you get a joker card, it's about being adaptable. It's about being not one thing. It's about adapting to the environment and the situations that you're facing. Whereas at another point I went for an audition for The Apprentice a few years back, and I'd really kind of like planned it all out and had the whole roadmap there, and I got through the first round of auditions, which is quite a big thing in itself, and I was like, this is going to happen, and I really like put all my eggs in one basket. And then when I got kicked out of the audition process, I was really down, and I was in central London and it was chucking it down with rain, and I was really upset. and my granddad had passed away about a week previous.
Mm-hmm.
And I only mentioning my granddad because I think my emotions were a bit on the edge, and I was in London bawling my eyes out. Couldn't even get on the train. I was so upset about this. And yeah, and I think because of the passing of my granddad, that my emotions were just that little bit more sensitive at that moment in time. And then where I'm standing in London, standing in this like doorway, just trying to get myself together, on the floor in front of me was the Eight of Diamonds. Just this card there, and also like the link to my granddad. My granddad was a big cards player. He loved playing card games. I picked up this card and I looked into it, and it's about having courage.
Well, what a message from the universe.
Yeah, at this moment where I didn't have courage, at this moment where I felt incredibly weak.
That's powerful.
The Eight of Diamonds is just there.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it was like, oh, that's a turning point.
Yeah.
And then I talked about earlier about that point where I was having this midlife crisis and feeling lost, and I get out of the car one day and sit on the floor is the Ace of Hearts there, and it's and that symbolises like abundance and love, and just a reminder that is out there in the universe. And then yesterday I found the Joker cards. I'm like, what's this thing about finding cards at turning points?
Yeah, I heard the footballer Joey Barton.
Right. Yeah.
He was on a podcast the other day, and he described what it means when someone says that the cards you've been dealt in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't quite understand it, and he put it into a different way for me to kind of understand. And he said that what it means is it's your parents. The cards that you're dealt in life, like you could be born to 2 aces, or a king and a queen, or a 3 and a 4. And the idea is that they're the cards you're dealt. You might have one parent that is a queen. You might have one that's an 8. The idea is just to give your children better cards to play with. So they're the cards that they're dealt. And I thought it was so insightful. He says some interesting things, Joey Barton. I know he's a controversial person, but it made me really like see it from a different, because I always used to think it meant like the cards you were dealt in life was like, when you get a bad poker hand and you go, oh, this is crap. I just thought it meant like that, and having him put it like that made me see it from a different way. So there's things like angel numbers, and which is like where you keep on, I think it's where you keep on seeing like numbers repeatedly, like
11 and 333,
and like you got to do wishes, or you got to,
there's so many of these different theories out there. I guess with the universe and life, none of us really know. None of us, if we did, maybe we'd be doing it all very differently. Maybe that's the beauty in it. None of us really know what this is about. I've got some ideas. I've had some experiences that come close to giving me some kind of answers personally. But I don't think I think they're all, they're definitely all just theories, aren't they? Whatever religion you turn to as well. Yeah. It is just a theory at the end of the day. And maybe in the hope to offer some guidance to move us forward.
Yeah. I've definitely became more spiritual as I've got older. Like I was raised Catholic, and I was like an altar boy. With the crucifix behind the priest. But then obviously like the church had quite a lot of issues. Yes, controversial. Yeah.
And we're living in a time, aren't we, where we've lost some trust in institutions, haven't we?
Yeah, big time. And I left the church. I was like, I can't do this. Because I felt like ashamed about like what the Catholic Church had become. But then because I became more atheistic in my mind, I felt that my mind then, because I think we're spiritual beings. It's clear we're spiritual beings. I mean, you only have to look at the temples and the cathedrals that were built before us. They were way more advanced than we were, and they really believed in God. So it's like, and I think that when you don't have like a higher power, something that's above you, you'll worship something else. because I believe we're spiritual beings, and I think that if you're worshipping something else, that's when you can start worshipping women. You can start worshipping money. You can start worshipping, your work. You can, and then I think that if you just tilt your like compass just one notch to this and just put it on, wow, someone had to have made this. I think that then it's enabled me to make more sense out of things and make peace with a lot of stuff that I didn't used to understand.
And I guess that's what we want as well as being spiritual beings. We want to find peace, don't we?
Yeah, and peace in your heart is one of the most beautiful feelings you can have is making peace in your heart. And how you make peace in your heart to me is by forgiving, being grateful and forgiving, and like. For example, like if there's someone that you hate or there's someone that you dislike, it's doing way more damage to you than it is to them. Like because you're holding that energy. So it's like forgive, and try.
And that's
peace.
the moment that you can move on when you can find that place to forgive.
And that's the making forgiving your mistakes and forgiving like my old photography when I was like. My career, my craft, my art is on the internet from 18. If you go deep enough, you can find my old photography.
Yeah.
And I used to, look at it like this. I couldn't look at it because I was like, ugh. But now I'm like, I'm proud of it. I look at it and I go, no, like that's you. Look where it got you.
Yeah.
Imagine if I was to turn around and send hate to my old work. This is a horrible.
What would you say, looking back, if you could send a message back to that younger 18-year-old self? Because at that point when you really kind of found photography and you were really finding you said you found yourself in your photography. You also had the illness that was happening around the same time. So you had that struggle and you had the purpose. If you could send a message back to that 18-year-old kid, what would you say to him?
Don't worship women. Stay off alcohol, and don't care about what the audience thinks. I got distracted by women. I partied too hard, and I there were moments where I cared a little bit too much about what other people thought about my work, and that was when I wasn't my best. The moment when I didn't care about them, like the orchestra, that's when I performed. That's probably what I'd say. But I think it's odd. Like when you're working in like the music industry, the rock and roll industry, or whatever, it's so unhealthy. And I think if you're going into it without a mentor, it's very easy to find yourself down a dark alley. In the wrong place, the wrong neighborhood. Why have I ended up here?
So what advice would you give to someone that's coming up then? So someone wants to be a photographer, they specifically in the kind of take the field that you've gone, but they're just about to start out. What would you say to them?
I modelled a lot of my success. I don't know, I want to say success. I modelled a lot of my career on a photographer called Glennie Friedman. Glennie Friedman was he was the photographer that did the Californian, LA hardcore punk scene. Bands like Fugazi, Minor Threat, and he was the photographer. He did Run DMC. He did remember the skateboard scene, the Californian skateboard scene when Tony Hawk was a kid.
Yes, yeah.
He photographed that, and he was part of 2 social movements. He was part of like this straight edge hardcore punk movement in the 80s in California, and he was also there at this skateboard movement, and he was like the photographer to go to if you were involved in that kind of stuff. And his work's so iconic, and I looked at his work and I thought I can replicate something like that. I can be that in England. I can be the photographer of this music scene, and I suppose My advice to someone if they wanted to do what I did would be is look for a scene, look for a movement, look for a cause, look for something that you can get behind.
What I'm also taking for that is an inspiration, someone to look up to, someone to
mentors.
A mentor.
Yeah, you know, like I didn't know I needed a mentor until a lot later in my life, and it was just coming from a working class background. None of my peers did what I did. Like I said, one of my best mates was a plumber. One of the best mates was a car mechanic. You know, like I couldn't really sit down with them and say, I've got this issue with my business, or I don't know how to do this, or I'm having this issue. They just didn't understand my world. And what I should have done is I should have seeked out a person that was further down the line than me that had experience. And to be honest, I did meet a few older photographers that did help steer me and give me advice that I did meet a few times, but it's a very like lone wolf kind of, you're on your own a little bit. But I think now with the internet, young people have got such a wealth of information. They can,
and ways to connect with people. Like I say, I would have never, if I hadn't have looked into Bumble Bizz, I'd have never, we'd have never found each other, would we?
Yeah, that's right.
And what a beautiful thing that is, that two people like can connect like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess I'm doing this. I'm doing this to speak to someone just like me, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I want someone out there who might listen to this and hear, oh, I've got that problem, or like that. That's an interesting kind of.
How would someone approach you if they were interested in what you do?
To work with me, or to get advice from me, or to
either. Yeah.
Drop me a message. Yeah. Just obviously it depends, because there's times where like we're really busy.
Of course.
When I'm really busy,
this is your profession.
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard to do that. But recently I did a nice little advertisement campaign for NatWest, and we had it was for a creative agency called Recipe, and we had a Formula One car. I think it was a Gran Turismo car. You know the movie Gran Turismo, and we had a local media team in, and the commercial was the kids making the commercial. So we were filming them from behind the scenes, and we had a bunch of aspirational young 16, 17-year-old people that want to be involved in the creative industry. I loved it. Like I gave them my camera, and I was like, borrow my lenses. I was giving them my lenses. I was explaining, like I have a real need to pass on information and share, because there's one guy that comes to my mind in particular. His name was Stephen Gerrard. He was a photographer from Birmingham. He moved to Canada. He messaged me out of the blue. This was back in the day on MySpace, and he was a professional photographer. Like he was working for Kerrang, Rock Sound, all these Enemy magazine. And when I saw his name appeared in my MySpace inbox, I kind of was like, "Whoa, he's a serious photographer." And he messaged me saying, "Do you want guest list to any of these, any gigs in Birmingham? It's lonely being in the photography pit. If you ever want to come, I'd love to meet you and chat to you." And I was just like, "Whoa!" And prior to that, I'd never really had that warmth, that kind of extended hand. And it gave me so much confidence, because I asked to be put on the guest list for a bunch of these bands that I liked, and I went down and photographed it, and it was so, like, I remember being like, that's exactly what I need to do for another young photographer, and that so influential for me. Yeah, it really helped me out. And
so you want to have that opportunity to give
100%
back to someone else?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. One of the last projects I did when I was out in Poland was I did a big project for Canva, Canva.com, and they own a website called Pixels, and I was employed to create content for them, and it's free for people to download. And it's had like the project I made had 10 million downloads, and I love thinking about how many people's art projects or little music videos or commercials or that I've managed to inspire or just inject
connect with.
Like how many things has that gone on to affect and
that
impact?
ripple effect.
I love thinking about stuff like that, sharing is caring, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what we've done here today. We've shared,
hopefully,
and hopefully, if one person listens, and that can affect one other person specifically, and hopefully within the art that you produce in your field. Or if not, there's been a lot in this, hasn't there? A lot in this conversation for people in any walk of life, really, hasn't there? It's surprising where these conversations can go.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you sitting down with me today, Tom.
Thank you for inviting me.
I feel like there's so much more that we could. I feel like you've got a lot of stories that we could cover, and maybe I'm sitting here. You said at the beginning this isn't perhaps your comfort zone, but actually, I feel like you could do your own podcast for photography. Like, I feel like you got a lot to share.
Yeah, possibly. It's something that I'm interested in. I mean, going back to my dad, like, when you're 7 years old and you're having to interpret, I found my voice when I was a kid, so I was quite talkative. So maybe talking is something that I'm good at. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe then you're better than you think. But this has been beautiful. This has been lovely. I do hugely appreciate it, Tom. I appreciate if there is an audience out there, if anyone is listening or watching. Thank you very much for joining us. If you want to find out more about the BTS Creative Academy, you can just search. Do you know what to search, Tom?
BTS_Creative
Academy. Yeah, it's very, very easy. It's out there on every platform. And a like and subscribe will make sure you don't miss out on any future conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, mate.